Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! You're supposed to! You're supposed to! You're to!
Everybody here dies by dawn. Dead by dawn!
Welcome to the Spookshow. Hello and welcome back to the All-American Spook Show. I'm Josh. I'm joined here with Tiana.
Hey.
And the Professor Smoke.
Oh, what's up?
And we are beginning the Sasquatch Summer off properly. I know we technically began it last week with our little kind of preview kickoff episode, which was brief, but just kind of gave you a foundation, a floor of, where we're going this summer. And boy, Smoke, you've started us off proper here with this one. Night of the Demon from 1980.
Yes, indeed. And that song you heard off the top after the open or whatever was a song by a British heavy metal band named Demon, and the song is Night of the Demon. It has nothing at all whatsoever to do with this movie.
Just a cool song.
But every time I think of this movie's title, I think of that song. So it is a good song, yes. And it's on Spotify if you want to check it out. But it's actually referencing another movie that some would arguably say is better than this, at least as far as the story, and that would be Curse of the Demon, I think it was called over here, the 1957 movie, and over there in Britain it was called, where it came out, it was called Night of the Demon.
Huh. Very
much recommend that movie as well. And we'll get to that somewhere down the line. It's kind of it's not from Hammer, but it's very much like something Hammer would have done.
So it's not quite Living in a Box by Living in a Box.
No, it's not that. Not quite that, but it is Night of the Demon by Demon.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, like I said, I think this is a good place to start the Sasquatch Summer. This is a good, This is a good foundation, really, honestly, better than even last week's. This is what we're doing kind of thing, because this is some crazy shit. Smoke.
This is one that
I don't know what kind of Bigfoot you have introduced to us here, but this is some crazy ass Bigfooting.
Yeah, I'm glad I held off on it because this is a title I've been wanting to get to pretty much since we started the show. It's one of the ones I thought about in the back of my head. And then maybe I've mentioned it in some episode here or there. I don't know. But I'm glad I held on. This is the perfect time to introduce it, is during the Sasquatch Summer, which is the first time we've done one of these. Of course, we did the Yeti Yankers. No, I mean Polar Predators.
Yeah, Polar Predators. Yeah, that was kind of like, and there are some similarities, and we'll get into that too. But that's the main theme of the summer is Sasquatch movies. But when we did Polar Predators, it was Yetis, snow monsters, that kind of thing. So it's very similar, and I think you'll see some connective tissue when we're talking about this movie to another movie that we talked about back during that event. I forget in what form we talked about that. It might have been Grindhouse, right? Grindhouse Gutter, one of those. But that was Shriek and the Mutilated, right? It's very, very similar.
Yeah, it's got that Grindhouse, low budget vibe, and I don't know the details of it. Maybe it looks like this, anyways. Maybe it's just because it's such a beat up print, but it looks like a movie shot on 16 millimeter, blown up to 35, and maybe it was. I can't remember now if we talked about it and went into that on Shriek of the Mutilated. It very well could have been. That's what it looks like, and this one also kind of looks like that, right?
It's better. Well, the version I watched was better. I don't know how you watched it, but I watched it on Screenbox, and and I don't know which version of that, but it looked pretty good. It
does now.
Now,
I could talk a little bit about that since we were mentioning it, and I'll go off the top. Might as well just get into that here. I have we're not doing video on this podcast right here, but I have a VHS, the big box VHS that VCI put out back in the 80s. That print was banged up and beat up. Whatever they struck that VHS from, that was the way I'd watched it all the way up until we bought the DVD or Blu-ray rather by who put that out? Was that Vinegar Syndrome? Or no? Severin, Severin.
Yeah.
So that's what we watched. That's probably what Screenbox had if I had to venture a guess. But
yeah, I would imagine, yeah.
At any rate, it was before the DVD by, I think, Code Red. Code Red put out a DVD some years back.
I've got some lineage here. This will help straighten up what you might be talking about here. The VHS was released in 1983 by VCI, right?
Yeah, VCI, that's one I have. Or VC2, some people call it, because it looks like
VCII.
VCII, yeah.
And then it was reissued again on VHS in 1986 by VCI, whatever. And then in 1987 by Gemstone Entertainment. So there's at least 3 different VHS, I guess.
In the VHS I have is the big box, and underneath it, it does say 1986. So I assumed that the small box.
You must have got the reissue, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same artwork in the same company, I believe, right? You said VC.
Yeah, VCI, yeah.
For both of the, yeah.
They just released it again 3 years later.
Yeah, in 86 they released it on the big box.
And then it was released on DVD by Black Horse in November of 2004. Then VidTape here's the random part. Black Horse released it on DVD on November 1st of 2004, and then VidTape released it on DVD November 30th of 2004. So like basically a month later, 2 DVD releases after radio silence since 1987. And then Code Red released the DVD in October of 2011.
Now, just to talk about a little bit about those real quick before we go into the next release on it, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to assume that those other 2 companies before Code Red that put them on DVD probably just put out the VHS that had already existed.
I would bet, yeah. Black Horse and VidTape probably weren't.
Probably, yeah. They're
truly remastering or making it look good. It's just VHS
probably not.
dub.
Maybe they probably just struck it for the VHS, and I don't know if they had some way to clean up the contrast levels or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't seen those prints, but Code Red. Now, nobody had access to a 35 millimeter print before the Severin. The best they could do, I think, was a VHS master, and that's what the Code Red disc was struck from. And I haven't seen that, but I've heard that it was a little bit better than the regular VHS that VC2 had put out, slightly. But then at some point, a 35 millimeter print did turn up, and that's what they struck the Severin disc from. And that's probably what you watched on Screenbox, I assume, because he said it looked really good.
It looked good to me. Yeah, it looked really good.
That's what this one does on Severin. Looks really good.
Now, it was in between those, though, there was one other DVD release by a company I've never heard of. It's a company called Mr. Fat W Video.
Never heard of that one either.
They released it on DVD in June of 2016. So that was the last, I guess, official DVD release. And then on Blu-ray, that came out November 26th of 2021 by Severin Films, and that's the one you were talking about. And that also at the same time, I guess they made a bigger deal out of it. They also released, which I have not seen or heard of this, a novelization of the movie. They released a novelization of it by Brad Carter, along with like limited memorabilia, including like replica Bigfoot masks. Can't say. Can't say.
That's the thing that's been going around here. That novel, a novelization being, of course, something that existed not as a novel first, but it was a movie first, and then a novel was made out of the script. Right.
Yeah.
That used to be something that went on. I know in the 80s. Like I have a novelization of Dawn of the Dead that luckily I got signed by George Romero back in 2000, whatever it was, 9 or something. But again, that was a novel. Of course, he wrote the script, and then this novel came out later. I guess it was a tie-in, right? They used to do to these things. Of course, many movies were based on a novel that existed first and then was adapted into a script and then to a movie. But there was a lot of the other way around. For whatever reason, I guess people really wanted novelizations.
I'm sure it's probably just some of that nostalgia, like, catering to us, the people that actually still care enough to I would actually go out and read this novelization because that has to be hilarious.
Yeah.
I need to track that down. God knows now, though, they probably only made so many copies, and now it's like, $300 for a copy of this.
Probably, yeah. So unfortunately, that's the case even with DVDs themselves these days.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. There's limited runs of, unfortunately, because people don't want the hard copies as much as, they just watch them on streaming. So they don't produce as many copies, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Now, I mentioned all these VHS, DVD, Blu-ray releases and everything over all these years. It actually did get, I guess, a very limited theatrical release. Now, I'm assuming by that they, extremely limited. I don't know to what degree. I couldn't find
that'd be an interesting thing to be sitting in on.
Yeah, I couldn't find any hard numbers on that, but it debuted February 29th, 1980 in Phoenix, Arizona. Just randomly. I don't know if it was in a mall like that other movie we were talking about a few weeks ago, but it was just it debuted in Phoenix, but it didn't actually get released until Halloween 1980. On October 31st, Halloween 1980 is when it came out. But I don't know to what degree, you know what I mean? I don't know how wide. Couldn't have been, just watch this movie and you'll know what I'm talking about, right? It couldn't have been a huge wide release. But maybe at that time, your post Friday the 13th and these slasher movies and stuff are coming out, right? It might have got some play briefly, but I couldn't find any hard numbers. But I think this was one that found its life on home video, right?
Oh yeah.
For the most
And I definitely saw it on that big box I was talking about that I have. It's how I rented it back in the day. It's I think it might have been Chaz Balin actually. I mean, he's what our gore score is an homage to. I think it's probably one of his articles in a Gore Zone magazine or something where he mentioned it, I believe, or somebody did. And they didn't mention all the good bits. He kind of kept that closer to the vest, I guess, which I think anybody who sees this movie shouldn't give away certain things on this before you unleash it on some other people,
And that might be a good point to put a pause and say that we are a spoiler-filled podcast.
Yeah.
So if you have never seen Night of the Demon, please, for the love of God, go watch it. First, secondly, don't go any further in this podcast without watching it, because we're going to spoil it. And like Smoke just said, there's going to be a few things that we're going to laugh and talk about here.
Yeah.
That we don't want to spoil it for you.
Yeah. If this is one that's falling through the cracks, if you're a fan of like gory horror movies, low budget horror movies and all that, and you just haven't gotten around to this one yet, do yourself a favor and then go watch that now, because you will immensely enjoy this, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Or it's so bad it's good, aspect in the gore or whatever.
At least certain parts of it. Now, and we'll get into the subtle nuances of everything here shortly, but certain parts are like, holy shit, God, I wish Will and Donnie were still here with us every week to, we need to inflict this on people kind of thing. Then there's other parts like, oh, fuck, hurry it up. Hurry it up. But that's how these movies are sometimes. Yeah,
because that's how, and it pretty much even though I don't consider this to be a regional horror film, because it has a low enough budget to have been that really kind of, but it's it's not. It was made around the Hollywood area by people who are into films and all that stuff. So I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Regional is usually people who don't really have any experience and they just make a movie in their hometown wherever they're at or whatever, right? So this looks like that and feels like that, but it's not quite that.
It was produced by Alden Company. It is not rated, so that kind of leads me down the path. This must not have had a wide release. For something not to have like an official rating leads me to believe that in 1980, it must not have played far and wide, But it has a total runtime of 1 hour and 36 minutes, and of course, it's a horror. To what you just pointed out, it was filmed in Hollywood and in Valencia, California, and a large part of it in the area near Six Flags Magic Mountain, and was actually filmed in 1979 for a budget of $70,000. I think they got their money's worth out of this one.
Well, yeah, and you think about that $70,000. I heard that $6,000 of it went into the Bigfoot creation.
Yeah,
the costume and everything.
I could believe it because I mean we've just based on what we saw in Polar Predators. There's worse.
Yeah,
right?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It ain't the greatest looking thing, but it ain't the worst looking thing either.
No, it's not the worst. We were kind of joking offline about it, and it kind of looks like what I don't know. It kind of looks a little bit like Grizzlor from Masters of the Universe, slightly, and something from what you said, Josh. From
some like reject from Clash of the Titans or something. Like it has,
like a Ray Harryhausen reject.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird looking thing once you finally see it. Yeah. It's and not only the way it looks, but the way it acts. It's more mannish. Than a lot of Bigfoot, Sasquatch type stuff. This thing, this thing's sadistic.
It is. It's definitely, and the sound though, kind of reminds me of the Incredible Hulk from the '70s. The Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk sort of growl, except prolonged.
Yeah. The only thing missing was the slow piano music as he walks down the road with his hobo satchel.
That's right.
One thing I think a big thing to point out here is that this was on the United Kingdom Video Nasty ban list.
Yes.
The notorious, dreaded Video Nasties of the 80s. Yeah. And apparently it stayed there until 1994.
Yeah. And at that point, I think it got passed with about 1:40 of cuts.
Yeah. They had to, even when they finally did let it go, they had to cut. I think you know what they cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. They cut something.
I guarantee that's what they cut.
Cut something
that wasn't the only thing getting cut.
That's right.
And we'll get into that shortly. But
then I think they. Oh, go ahead. You're probably going to say.
I wasn't going to make another point. I was you probably know what it was. So it did eventually get released.
And then it got released. I think in what I was reading about 2021 maybe it did finally get released uncut in the UK.
Probably with that Severin Films.
Probably so.
Yeah. That time's out. That's because it came out in November of 2021. So that's probably what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, they were a bit more staunch with their ratings, censorship, and all that stuff in the UK in the 80s than they were here in America. I mean, we don't really have censorship. You basically you wouldn't be able to show the movie maybe in certain theaters, or if you did, it would be a limited audience, like it was an X-rated type movie. But you could show it.
By and large, we don't censor it. We just say like, well, you've made what you've made. If you want it to play, you better cut this out. Otherwise,
that's right. Yeah,
it's only going to play in 6 theaters.
Yeah. Because we don't have censorship like that, they couldn't tell you, and they still to this day don't tell you have to cut this out to get an R rating, and you have to cut that out. You submit it to them, and they
make recommendations.
Submit it back to you and say we can't release this R rated with what it is right now. You'll have to cut some. You'll have to determine. You basically, I guess, they have to determine what they think the MPAA is telling them they need to have cut out. So then they go and trim whatever they think is a glorious bit, I guess. Which kind of sucks because, I mean, hell, maybe it wasn't that bit. Maybe it's something else. And then you submit it again, and a different group of people from the MPAA watch it. But hey, at least we don't have full-on censorship. You didn't have to worry about the video nasties in the U.S.
I'm forgetting what movie we talked about recently. It might have been Blade Runner or Scarface. I want to say it was one of those. Maybe it was something else. I'm just blanking. But there was one where it was like they kept the MPAA kept sending it back, and then he just sent it back to them. And didn't cut out anything.
Yeah. And I forget what that was. Was it Scarface?
Maybe. I can't remember, but he sent it back like 3 times, and then they're fine. Yeah, okay, it's okay. And they never made a cut.
There's somebody else. Who was it? Was it Lloyd Kaufman or somebody we talked about in the past? Like MPA submitted it. The MPA said, "Hey, you can't release it like this." So they just basically didn't cut anything out of it. They submitted it. They cut some stuff out, submitted it, and then when it got sent back to them, they put the stuff back in and released it as an R-rated movie.
Yeah,
I want to say it's Lloyd Kaufman and maybe Toxic Avenger or something. I don't know.
Well, now
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Now and we were recently talking about it when we did the new Final Destination Bloodlines movie, and that now we fortunately live, I think, in a post Art the Clown Terrifier world of like.
Oh yeah.
Now, like I think there's even less censorship in a lot of ways because now like you don't necessarily have to worry about your movie being backed by big Hollywood so much anymore, right? And I think you might see it a little bit again when the Toxic Avenger comes out later this summer. And
I think so. I think
movies can still do what they want to do and just be nasty as hell, and still be released pretty wide. I mean, Terrifier 3 proved that, right?
Yeah, that was an interesting theme because Terrifier 3. Not to go off on too much of a tangent, but just a little bit here is that. It was released unrated, not NC-17. They didn't submit it to the MPAA, which would have, of course, they would have had to cut a shitload out. They wouldn't have been. You might as well not even release it if you wanted to try and get an R rating because they would have had to cut out almost everything out. And NC-17 would have damned it to limited theatrical runs or whatever. Limited. But whatever the case, they released it in theaters unrated. There were some theaters that were letting kids into this movie because technically it's unrated. It's not. It doesn't have a rating. So I mean, really. You could, I guess, I don't know. I guess at some point.
I mean, because I worked in theaters, and that would be a weird one, right? Because when I worked there, this was like 99, 2000. So, like, you were pretty strict. Like, all right, nobody under 17 is going to come see this thing if it's rated R.
Yeah.
But we never had any unrated movies. We never had even an NC-17 movie playing when I was there. So, like, it would have been a weird gray area for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely something that's only a modern type thing because first of all, he didn't want to release Terrifier or he didn't have any plans to release Terrifier in the theaters. Somebody mentioned it to him, right? Maybe he should or whatever. And they said, okay, we'll do a limited run of it. So they didn't bother submitting it to the MPAA. And it did so well. They're like, okay, well, we're going to certainly aim to put the second one in the theater right off the bat, unrated. And they did. And I did hear some stories of like some theaters letting underage, like kids under 18 in to see it before they really realized themselves what it was. And I guess then I don't know. I guess it was up to the manager. I don't know how they really played that out because technically it's not rated. So technically, NC-17 is no one under 17. R is no one under 18 without an adult or guardian. Unrated. I mean, really, it's I don't know. It's at the discretion of the theater, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, it's up to the individual theaters.
But at any rate, movies are definitely gorier now than they were in the 90s.
Well, beyond that, I just think that it's cool. The whole reason I even brought it up that we live in a world where now like these movies can get wide release.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a movie like Terrifier 3 being made in 1995? And then, right, or 85 or any other time, and then actually getting put in like 2,000 something theaters? It wouldn't have fucking happened.
I mean, George Romero had a bad enough time as it was. and he lost money because he refused to submit Night of the Living Dead. Well, not Night of the Living Dead, because it really wasn't. But Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, he refused to submit to the MPAA. He's like, I'm going to put him in the theater unrated. Whatever happens, happens. And of course, that hobbled them as far as the box office, because they treated it like, at that time, they treated it like an X rating.
Yeah, and that's what it used to do. Like, it would just doom your movie to being barely played, and you wouldn't make hardly any money, and it would just be this underground kind of thing. But now
newspapers wouldn't advertise it. You don't have to worry about that now. You got word of mouth and internet and all that stuff. But back then, newspapers were your main thing for looking up what movies are playing at the theater. And then some newspapers wouldn't carry anything above an R rating advertisement for,
Now back to this movie though, Night of the Demon. The reason that I think it got on the video nasty is those particular scenes, but those particular scenes that we're talking about would not have been in there if it were up to the director, right?
Yeah.
Because the director was James C. Wasson. He made a really tamer movie.
Yeah, there was no gore in the original cut.
Yeah. Like the what I read was the first cut was far more tame and was essentially probably everything ungory about this movie.
Yeah.
It was,
and if you think about that,
it was actually
the
producer Jim L. Ball that put all that shit in.
Yep. He shot all those scenes, I guess, in that. I assume, like, the way the movie unfolds, you can kind of tell maybe if you know that going into it, you can kind of see where, okay, here's this added thing, which was...
Well, it's like you're telling the story of this, that's the story of the movie, is this class that is studying Bigfoot. They get reports that there might have been a Bigfoot sighting, so they go and investigate it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the movie by and large would have been, is these kids out there camping and getting attacked by a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But instead, like, they watch it and they're like, nah, we need some more juice here.
Yeah.
So you can tell in the way that it's basically when it cuts back to them sitting at a campfire and the professor is like, well, now remember, one of the reasons we're up here is we've had a report of two Girl Scouts, and then it's a flashback.
Yeah.
And every time you see a flashback, I guarantee you that's what they shot a scene for the professor to sit there and set it up, and then here it is.
Yeah.
Because every time there's a flashback, something fucked up happens. So this is it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, this movie wouldn't. If you were to take out all those gore scenes, you really don't have an interesting Bigfoot movie, really.
At best, it's Shriek of the Mutilated.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
at best.
And it had a little bit of gore. I guess it would have had more gore than the James Wasson cut would have had. Maybe the Shriek of the Mutilated might have been a little bit gorier than that cut, even if it had been released that way. And thankfully,
on one hand, I'd like to see it, but on the other hand, nah. It's nah. I mean, what we got is awesome, for what it is. But like that first one, it had to have been dry as dust, and you can't do that in 1980, right?
No.
Like, what are we talking about here? Friday the 13th. What else?
Friday the 13th. Sure there's
Maniac.
Like Maniac came out in 1980.
You got that shit coming out, and then you come out with that.
Cannibal Holocaust came out in 1980.
Maybe and sometime in the 70s, you might have been able to get away with that, but by 1980, Halloween of 80.
We're on an anniversary year here for it now. It's 45 years old.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, this October, I guess technically it'd be 45.
Yeah, Halloween, I think. Right, it came out on October 31st.
Yeah.
When it had that limited
whatever kind of release it had. I'm guessing by that point, it must have been drive-ins and
probably
something like that,
Grindhouse Circuit or whatever. Times Square. I'm just guessing. I don't know for sure, but I would assume if it played anywhere, it played there, and the drive-ins. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to thank old Jim Ball for those. How ironic, right? A man named Ball had it in that scene. Directed by James C. Wasson. He did the movie Dreamer and another one called Windows, but most of his releases were videos. The screenplay was by Mike Williams. This is his only credit. Never did anything ever again. This is it. It's from a story by Jim L. Ball, the producer we just talked about, who had also done such hits as Fraternity of Horror and Hotel Hell. And
I have not called either one of those yet.
I've heard of Hotel Hell because it's a catchy name, but I've never watched it.
Yeah.
Never watched it. It stars Michael Cutt as Professor Nugent. This is his film debut. He was also in the movie Volcano years later, and he did tons of TV. Like, he's one of those ones when you look at his filmography, he's in like The A-Team, Love Boat, Dukes of Hazzard, you know, all the shit of the 80s and 90s. He was in it. Joy Allen as one of the classmates. She was in Man in the Dark and once again, tons of TV shows. And then I guess most notably, because there's not much to note here with this cast, Bob Collins as Roy. He was in, many years later, the Brad Pitt movie Seven. He was in that. Small role in that. And Smoke, I doubt you remember him from it, but you might remember the movie Police Academy, the first one.
No.
He was in that. So, and I think he had lots of small roles and, you know, big character actor type stuff and that. But yeah, that's, as far as background stuff, that's about all I had. I mean, you know, until we dive into it here. So I think that's what we need to do. We just need to dive right into this fucker because this is some shit. And I said it earlier that he's sadistic. Like, this is a different type of Bigfoot here. And I'm sure we're going to have some weird examples throughout this summer. Lord knows what kind of deep end of the pool we're getting into here, right, with some of these movies. But I got to think this is one of the only ones that wields weapons.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably so.
I mean, most of the time you think Sasquatch, Bigfoot movies, you think like he's just going to pummel somebody with his bare brute strength. Maybe he rips them apart or something like, and you get some of that, right? The very first kill is him just randomly attacking the fisherman and ripping his fucking arm off. I mean, his arm off. That was cool though when he does that and then like the blood flows and then fills up the Bigfoot.
Yeah, where the title. The title screen.
Night of the Demon, and it's as blood is filling up the Bigfoot mud puddle thing. Yeah, that was pretty cool visual. But yeah, like then you get later in the movie, like this motherfucker's wielding axes, knives. I mean, he just straight up brutally stabs 2 Girl Scouts with knives.
Well, makes them
stab each other.
What kind of Bigfoot are we dealing with here?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, there's a lot of weirdness and oddness about this movie, but I think to me one of the weirder ones was that second death, the van couple. There's a couple in a van having sex, and then the dude gets pulled out and just, I guess, like he climbs up to the top of the van and just gets the shit beat out of him, just myrtleized, right? And he's sliding down the front windshield, and the girl is just she didn't fucking help. She barely reacts other than just, oh God, she covers her breast up. That's about it. And
she keeps whining like she's still having sex.
She's moaning.
as he's getting brutally mauled to death on top of the van, which you don't see any of this. You just see him slide down the windshield with blood, right? But then it cuts back to her, and she's got the most melodramatic horse shit death I've ever seen. I may have ever seen in movie history. Does she die? Because I'm almost led to believe like she just died of fear.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Like she just kind of sits there like, and then just goes silent and stiff and stares blankly ahead for like what feels like 5 full minutes. Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck did I just see? I think she just died of shock. I don't like.
And now thinking back on it too, like you said, James, the director didn't have the gory parts in there, so maybe the producer, when he put that in, he didn't have a scream for her, so he's like, "Well, just put in the sex moans,"
Yeah. Oh, and dude, it's so interminably long. Him going down the windshield, slowly going down in the blood.
Yeah, with the blood,
just slow.
Apparently, she did not die.
Well, I mean, I just assumed because she just froze and never moved. Like it's like, and it just stares. I'm like, okay, did she die of a heart attack? What just happened to her? In Jim L. Ball scene, because that's what it was. The next death, the sleeping bag twirl death.
Yes, that's a doozy.
This has to be inspiration for what Jason, right, and some other stuff we've seen in years.
Yeah, part 7, Friday
Has-
13th,
yeah.
part 7, I think it was, with the sleeping bag. Yeah.
One of these random campers just gets snatched up by the Bigfoot and just fucking just twirled in the air as he's in the sleeping bag. Whoa, like just fucking spins him around and then hooks him right onto a stick.
Into a broken branch.
Yeah,
jagged
like
branch
upside
thing,
down, and then he just, it's like,
blood draining down his mouth.
yeah, like I was almost thinking, like, dude, this dude's gonna break character because that blood's gonna go in his mouth, and he's gonna be like, ooh, But he played it straight. I give him that.
Yeah, this movie,
hilarious.
you quickly learn, is basically a movie about what not to do in Bigfoot country.
Yeah,
Don't have sex in a van in the middle of the woods in Bigfoot country. Don't camp, especially don't camp outside of a tent. That guy was just laying on the ground in a sleeping bag. Not that the tent was going to stop him,
But I think that's the weird thing about it. There's a lot of weird things about this movie, but one of the things about this movie that makes it unique is that it's a slasher movie, right?
Yeah, it's basically a slasher, Bigfoot slasher movie. Yeah,
Bigfoot's fucking Michael Myers in this movie is what he is.
Michael Myers or Jason.
He's a serial
in the
killer.
woods. Don't come into the woods.
He's not just a wild beast of the woods. He's a fucking serial killer. He's a sadist. I mean, I was like, wow, this is fucking nuts. The weapons, I think that's what got it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the first thing when he does the sleeping bag thing. I was like, okay, well, he's actually having fun with his victims. But then it's when he grabs the axe and then chops the dude with the axe. That's when I'm like, all right, he's just a maniac. This Bigfoot's a maniac. But before we get to the axe guy, after the sleeping bag, we have to mention the next death, which is the motorcyclist.
Yes, who stops on, again, another thing. Don't stop on the side of the road and take a leak in Bigfoot territory either.
Do not urinate on a Bigfoot.
Yeah. I mean, that should go without. We should all know that. That should go without saying. Don't piss on a Bigfoot. Pretty standard fare to me, but they drive it home with this one. This dude randomly pulls his bike off to take a leak and starts, urinating, and then Bigfoot yas him out of the bushes. Ah! Like, by the way, it looks like he's just, like you said earlier when we were talking about this offline, it looks like he's holding two, like, bush sticks.
He pulls them apart and reveals himself.
Like, you thought I was a bush. Fuck you! And then you see full-on penis. For a split second there, you're just like, I don't care where you're meaning to look. You look down, you're like, well, there's the dude's junk. And then Bigfoot grabs it and pulls it off.
Rips his junk off. You're like, at that point, you're like, what in the absolute fuck am I watching here? What? That's the first. That's the first and only time I think that a Bigfoot has ripped a guy's junk off. Pretty sure.
And we need to
be wrong.
We truly. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. We need to keep a dick journal or something of the movies that we watch. Like, because there was Wolf Cop with the. That was horrible. And then there's
there was a classic way back when, Street Trash.
I knew Street Trash was going to come up, but we've got plenty of examples here. But this one, man, it's pretty bad. And we haven't even got to I Spit on Your Grave yet, right?
This one, that's true. I Spit on Your Grave too. But at least with the Street Trash one, it's funny. It's hilarious. It's messed up.
Well, that's clearly for comedy's sake.
Yeah, that's played for comedy for sure. Yeah. This one you feel it, because not only does it, you see his junk there as he's taking the piss, and Bigfoot goes to grab it and jerks it off.
They come back. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a bit.
And then they come back for more.
Really? Then he comes and rips it off.
Yeah. And then the actual horribleness happens. No, then they actually come. You see it happen, and then they like, no, we're staying with this. That ain't the end of the scene, fuckers. We're staying with this, and you see him like walking along, bleeding out, like with whatever's left.
With his jagged penis flesh hanging down between his legs. I mean, it's just like a jagged stump of flesh and blood just gushing out.
And then they kind of trained the blood on the bike. You notice that?
Yeah.
You're not really looking at that so much anymore. Now you're just seeing the blood
drain down the bike,
and then the narration of the professor is like, he eventually bled out. Yeah, you think? Good Lord.
And then right after that, what do they say? Oh, it's time to go to bed now.
Yeah. Now get some rest.
They're around the fire, telling the professor telling the story around the fire or whatever.
Yeah, now get some rest. We're gonna go Bigfoot in the morning, and everybody's like, "What the fuck? Oh no!" Yeah.
Tight.
One of the students, once again, don't have sex around Bigfoots.
Yeah.
One of the students, or two of the students, are having sex, and then the guy just gets clawed down the back. But it's the weakest clawing you've ever seen in your life. It's just kind of like, and then there's happens to be claw marks, But then the guy suffers from that for the rest of the movie. Like it becomes somewhat of a concern. Like, Johnny's going to get an infection from this Bigfoot claw marks.
He's going to turn into a Sasquatch. Or something.
Yeah, no, they never went down that road. It's just kind of like he just suffered with scratches the rest of the movie, until the end. Then that's when Bigfoot grabs the axe and axes the dude. And that was kind of, it is what it is, right? But it kind of weak too. Like he takes the axe, kind of hits him right here in the shoulder, and then the dude melodramatically like, he's shaking back and forth, and then like I think he takes the axe to him again, right? But that's when I'm like, all right, this Bigfoot's nuts. And not even based on what just happened a minute ago. Then he stabs the two Girl Scouts. I love, by the way, too, it's just clearly like two 20-year-old college age girls that they got, and they just put white shirts on and said Girl Scouts on it. Oh, they're Girl Scouts, okay.
That's kind of like the Godfrey Ho movies, when you wouldn't know they were ninjas unless they had the ninja headband. Ninja on it.
Oh, now you know. Watch out. But he's got a knife this time. Or did he take the knife from him? I don't even know where the fuck he got the knife. But the Bigfoot just stabs them to death with knives and then makes them stab themselves and everything. Like, okay, then we got to get into the insanity of the last little bit of the movie. Crazy Wanda.
Oh, yeah. Oh, plus, we didn't even mention the fact that there's also talk of some sort of a cult. Sasquatch Bigfoot cult. Well, they say cannibal cult, although unfortunately we don't. With all the other stuff going on in this movie, one thing they mentioned that I was hoping to see the cannibal cult activity, but no, you don't get any cannibalism. But what you do get is this, like you were going to say, is
maybe that was more of from the original cut. They wanted to do something with cannibalism, but not really show it. But then he just came along and like, nah, screw that. we got some dick ripping to get to. We got no time for cannibalism.
But they do a ritual though. But a ritual out in the woods with the Sasquatch cult, and
then he just shoots the pistol in the air and splits them up.
Spooks them because they're about to.
Wouldn't you think they would be beyond like being scared of that though? Like there's like 40 of them out in the woods about to have, God knows what they're about to do. You would think like they'd be like, what's this guy over here shooting a pistol going to do to us? But no, they scatter like ants. And
they built this Bigfoot effigy too, right? This life-size Bigfoot. I don't know
what they were trying to do. Really, were they trying to impregnate this lady with the Bigfoot baby?
So, we'll find out. You'll find out that she.
God, well, that's what you got to get right too. She was raped by Bigfoot.
Yes. And so show that.
Okay, so not only does he do horrible things to people, he axes them, he stabs them, and makes them stab themselves. But now he's just straight up a rapist. I mean, what the hell, man?
Not only does he rape her, but then she also is able to somehow get pregnant.
Yep.
With the
Bigfoot baby. And then which is immediately killed by once again we need to talk about her dad.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the finest acting jobs in the movie. Was the dude that played her dad. Because not trying to be, he's hilarious.
Yeah. Some of the dialogue in here is pretty damn good too.
Which I was trying to find out who that guy was, but I cannot find his name. I'll keep looking for that, but I can't find out who that was. But he was hilarious in it. Not even openly necessarily trying to be, but it was hilarious.
Yeah.
He is ashamed of her, thinks she's like demon lady. Then she, almost unrelated to that, the Bigfoot thing happens. And then she gets pregnant by Bigfoot. This is crazy sentences I'm saying here. And then, like, I guess the dad kills the baby when she has it, right?
Yeah.
And then to bury it. So then, like, fast forward. Now that's the flashback. Fast forward to now. This these very, very intrusive class and this professor, by the way, getting all up into her business and making her face all of her worst moments of her life. They go and dig the baby up to prove that this was a monstrosity. And was it just me, but did it look like they opened up the box and it was like a cow skull?
Yeah, it looked like a cow skull.
Yeah, like they didn't even try to make up something that looked kind of like a Bigfoot baby. They just they just put like
this
an animal
baby
skull.
had a hell of a noggin, when it had to hurt like hell.
They just put like a damn like deer head in there or something. Like, yeah.
I hope it was a C-section when they took it.
Yeah, no kidding. So yeah, then they're like, oh fuck, yeah, this really happened. She's not crazy. This really happened. Then you get the final attack. The Bigfoot attacks them in the cabin and just 10 minutes of slow-mo action.
Oh yeah.
Including the one, I guess you call it another splatter money shot, I guess, is the guy when he throws the guy across the saw blade. There's a saw blade sitting there in the room or whatever it was, and Bigfoot slings the guy, and the guy goes across the saw blade on his belly, lands on the floor, and then Bigfoot reaches into his stomach cavity, right, and pulls his guts out, and then just swings him over his head.
He's going like Leatherface with the chainsaw with this dude's intestines. Yeah, as he's still
that was another
slow-mo.
scene when I first saw him. I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
As he's still slow-mo killing everybody. And I mean, like, they never let up on the slow-mo. It's the last 10 minutes,
the whole ending.
Yeah, like the whole, like, he's just killing people left and right, and it's all in slow-mo.
And you finally get the full-on reveal. Well, I mean, you got it before that, but you definitely see the Bigfoot in all his glory.
Yeah. This is where you see the full makeup and everything. Like, he's not just hiding in the shadows or anything. Like, you're seeing the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch. But yeah, everybody dies except for the professor. Meanwhile, he grabs him by the head and just burns his face on the stove. That's how he tries to take him out. But they don't explain how he got out of it, really, right? He survived it somehow. He got out of that. Yeah. And he's still alive. And the last scene of the movie is, the setup from the beginning of the movie is he's in a hospital bed with like half his face covered by the burns. And the only survivor. The doctor and the detective or whoever talking to him, they're just writing him off as he's criminally insane. Credits, Yeah. Wow. I think you have set an unrealistic bar for the rest of these Sasquatch movies the rest of the summer.
Yeah, one thing's for certain. I don't know that too many more are gonna beat it in the gore department, or
Oh, we'll find out as the summer goes along. We'll see what gets pulled. But man, I mean, I know somewhere in there we're gonna get the Legend of Boggy Creek, but I still think that one's not quite like this.
Not in that gore department. It is a classic in its own right, of course. But
we'll get to that one later. But yeah, I don't know how many are going to top it. As far as Sasquatch movies are concerned, but we'll find out as we go along here. We'll see what gets pulled. So I think it's a good start, though. A good base foundation level movie here to start off the Sasquatch summer. Before we get into what we're going to watch next week, we need to do our usual house cleaning here. So, Tiana, did you come up with a kill count?
Yep, it was 18.
18. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much everybody not nailed down here, right? Bigfoot's getting a hold of them. Let's talk about the kill reel.
Highlight kill.
Good Lord. Highlight kill. I mean, you could go a few different ways here. You could, because there's some pretty good ones. Yeah. But I think you know where I'm going. I think if there's one scene of this movie you're going to take to your grave, it's the motorcyclist getting destroyed in the crotchial regions. Poor unfortunate soul. So I think that's your highlight kill. So, Smoke, what's the gore score?
Gore score.
I mentioned Chaz Balin earlier in reference to, I think, him probably introducing me to this movie through the pages of Gore Zone back in the 80s, or whichever one. I know I didn't have Deep Red yet, but the gore score comes from Chaz's, Deep Red Horror Handbook. And I'm gonna refer to it right now, which I usually do if Chaz has rated it before, and we'll see if I agree with it. So he did it in the pages of Deep Red Horror Handbook. He rated it a 7 in the gore score, and I'd say, I mean, 7 or 8. I don't know. I mean, it's that vicious dick ripping. You got the gut slinging over the head. The axe kill is not the goriest, but I mean, so yeah, maybe it is fair, because I mean, really, you got a lot of kills in here. A couple of them are really gory, including the dick ripping, like we talked about. That's the goriest for sure.
Yeah,
but it's not. All of the other ones aren't necessarily prolonged, right?
I mean, that's the thing about it overall. Like, we've talked about these highlights, but there's a lot of shit in between where nothing's happening.
Yeah.
It's just conversations as they walk through the woods or sit by the campfire.
True.
So
yeah, I think I'm going to revert to Chaz's score here and keep it at the 7. And also he's got a little blurb here. And like I said, I'm glad I didn't have the Deep Red Horror Handbook before I saw this movie, because he does. It's just a paragraph, little review he does, and so I'll just read that really quick. Like I said, he gives it a 7 in the gore score, and that's what I'm going with. But he says, anthropologists tracking a Bigfoot creature get splattered in this zestfully gory amateur monster pic. Ever see a guy get his dick torn off by a pissed off Yeti, or see entrails used as a deadly weapon? Enjoy, but have your sense of disbelief on hold when the monster finally arrives. Okay, that's his review. So yeah, I'm glad I didn't necessarily read that review at first, because I would have been a little bit mad about when it finally, not mad, but you get to that part and then it's kind of a anticlimactic, because you already know it's coming, right?
That almost read like, if you believe in Bigfoots, you'll believe in them less after seeing this movie. I don't know. That's funny though. Yeah, you definitely don't want that spoiled. So that's why we gave you a fair warning beforehand. But that being said, if you've made it this far and you haven't seen it, go check it out. Yeah. Go check it out. But we didn't give our star rating, so we probably need to do that. So Smoke,
we usually do that. We do that before.
We'll go the opposite direction. So Smoke, you brought it to the table. We'll let you go first. What are your final thoughts and what's your star rating?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is a fun movie. I think without the kills, it wouldn't be much of anything. And like you said, it kind of drags a little bit here and there. But I still like I said, it plays like a regional horror movie, even though it's not. And I love regional horror movies. They can be boring as hell to some people. Especially in those scenes where nothing much is going on, where there's no Bigfoot, no gore. It can get a little bit bogged down and a little bit, boring or whatever. I'm very much used to that aspect of these types of movies, so it doesn't really deter my rating too much. Now, if there had been no gore, like the James Poisson cut, this movie would have been forgotten. I would have watched it one time and it would have been done. It's like, okay, it's not really worth repeat viewing again.
Yeah, that probably would have been like some made-for-TV bullshit NBC Sunday night movie or something.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. I don't even know why you would even make a movie like this without any gore at all. I mean, let's forget the Legend of Boggy Creek, but Legend of Boggy Creek has a better storyline and stuff going on. There's other stuff going on to where it doesn't have to rely on massive amounts of gore or anything. And I guess the producer saw that this movie was weak as hell without that, so then he went back in and thankfully added all those gore scenes that got it put on the Video Nasties list in the UK for good reason, right? Yeah. Back then. I think I'm going to give it. It has been a sort of a personal. I'm going to say it's no masterpiece. It's a so bad it's good type, fun, entertaining movie to watch, and those are the types of movies I enjoy those. So I'll probably give it a 3 and a 3 1/4.
All right, Tiana, what do you say?
Brian's the one that introduced me to this. Thank goodness. And then watching it, I think that might have been my second or only third time, but man, it's just so freaking out there and entertaining. But I'm going to give it a 2.5.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen it. And Smoke, now you can, add me to the list of people you introduce it to. I'd seen this title before, but it was just one that just got, I guess, kind of dismissed. Whatever.
It doesn't stand out. First of all, Night of the Demon does not invoke a Bigfoot, scenario to you when you hear Night of the Demon. And then
we haven't talked about that. There is the movie Night of the Demons, right? That that more people have seen for sure. More people have probably heard of. So I'm not saying it necessarily buries it, but if you're looking at the list of movies and you see that one, you might, watch that. Maybe you just kind of ignore this one. I don't know, but
not to mention the British one I mentioned about that song, the heavy metal song off the top, Night of the Demon. There was the British movie from 1957 that was called Night of the Demon. So that that kind of throws people off too, maybe sometimes. But it wasn't called that in America. It was called Curse of the Demon.
Not to mention this too. It says Night of the Demon, but it's about Bigfoot.
Yeah,
So there might be that little bit of gap there in logic where you're like, what?
Yeah, if you don't know if you don't read further into it, you would have no idea that this is a Bigfoot movie.
Yeah,
and if you are into, seeing every Bigfoot movie or whatever, maybe you're into cryptids and you're trying to watch all the Bigfoot movies, then
maybe you missed that one because it says demon. Yeah. Whatever the reasons, but yeah, so like I just hadn't watched it, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoy those parts. I mean, like obviously that one scene, that's horrible, but it's hilarious. The sleeping bag thing was I was rolling.
Yeah,
I was laughing my ass off, and there was a couple of times.
These are the kind of movies you look for that stuff, right? Whenever you're and it makes a good group movie if you got some friends that are like into that kind of thing. We'd get a few brews or whatever, and kick back and watch Night of the Demon.
Yeah, this would be one that would have been good for us to have a watch along. And maybe one day we still get to it, right? I think we could. Yeah,
maybe I should have saved it for that. Thought about that.
I mean, I think it works this way. It's not like we can't do that. You know what I mean? So I'm glad we watched it and everything, but now I know. So now we need to now we can do a watch along and make Will and Donnie sit down and watch it with us or something one day. We'll find a way to get this thing in. But I enjoyed it. So just based on everything, like you said, it is slow at times, and that kind of brings it down a little bit, but not enough for me to shit on the movie. I didn't like it. I still had a good time, and it keeps up a decent enough pace, even though with that. Yeah. So I'm going to go 3 stars. I need to go own a copy of this. I'm mad that I don't own a copy of this. So I'm going to go track down the Blu-ray or something. So there you go. That leaves us with a consensus overall rating of 2.9 out of 5 stars. So I think that's enough to recommend it. Based on everything we've said, you just need to at least see those highlight kills and everything from this movie at the least. Go seek those out, but don't see it in snippets though. Watch it in its entirety so you can enjoy everything, the whole buffet.
True. It is a movie that you need to kind of like you can see a highlight reel of things from Friday the 13th or whatever, and that's fine. But this movie, it's everything that happens before, even though some of it's slow. It's that lead into those scenes that I think make them even better.
Yeah.
Because if you just watch them on their own, they're gory and they're funny for the sleeping bag scene and all that stuff. But watching it in context of here's this guy on the ground, no tent, just sleeping in a sleeping bag. He wakes up, boom, there's Bigfoot. Bigfoot grabs him and pulls him in the sleeping bag and just slings it over his head. And I mean, it's just out of the blue, but pretty much.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's so out of the blue. Not to belabor the point, but it's not even part of the story. No. It's here's this story. You're following this group of kids. Oh yeah, by the way, this shit happened. Now let's go see that. You're like, whoa, what the fuck? And then you go back to the kids, or the students.
Yeah. And knowing what you know after the fact, if you didn't, if you knowing that the producer went and added these things in, it's very obvious that here's this guy who's unrelated to anything, but they need some more goriness to the movie. So here's this camper sleeping out there. Let's grab him, sleeping bag, sling him around. And whose ever idea? I guess that was the producer's idea. Was fantastic.
Yeah. Whoever came up
as far as just cheeseball.
Yeah, whoever came up with all these crazy kills, kudos. If it was him or whoever, when they went back to the drawing board, they drew it right. So there you go. Next week, we don't quite know what we're going to be watching. It's going to be a wild card pick. All we know is that it's going to be a recent Sasquatch movie. So it has to be one made in the last 5 years. So that means from 2021 to present. Mm-hmm. We know it's going to be somewhere in there. So God knows what we're about to adventure into. So look to the socials and everything this week. We'll let you know what it's going to be so you can get in front of it and watch it with us, or watch it before we talk about it so you won't be completely spoiled. That's what we like to do. So there you go. And we got a big summer of Sasquatch fun ahead of us. Now, I will add, because it's coming up in a couple of weeks, we are going to be taking a brief pause from the Sasquatch Summer to go check out 28 Years Later. That's the third movie, the sequel to 28 Days Later, then 28 Weeks Later, correct? And then they skipped months and just went to years for this one. So 28 Years Later comes out June 20th. So we're going to watch it that weekend. And then the episode that comes out on June 23rd. So after next week's wild card episode, we'll take that 1 week break from the Sasquatch event to go check out 28 Years Later. And then we will come back to it with Tiana's pick. Which, Tiana, you're going to have a vintage pick, so we'll see what you're going to... That's a smaller list. That's a smaller list. So, so we'll see what you pick for that at the end of the month. And then, we're going to be going with this whole Sasquatch Summer bit all the way pretty much through most of the month of August before we wrap it up. So it'll encapsulate our 2 of our YouTube series as well, by the way. Video Vortex and Grindhouse Gutter will be involved in this, so you want to go check those out as well. So you're going to get your Sasquatch fill this summer from the Spook Show for sure. So for Tiana, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All-American Spook Show, and we'll talk to you next week.
Please replace the speaker on its rack when you're ready to leave. Failure to do so will damage both the speaker and your car. We'll be grateful, and so will the patrons who follow you.